And you can type your questions into the Q&A box at any time as we're going along, and we'll have plenty of time for questions at the end. So I want to welcome you all to the second presentation in the 2021-2022 Humankind series, West Shore Community College's Cultural Arts and Lecture Series. Last week, Professor Mike Nagel showed us how Eber Board fostered the movement of people and goods across the Great Lakes and the country. If you missed his presentation, it's available on the Humankind website. Tonight, we'll be talking about a different kind of movement. The guiding question for this discussion is, how do people with disabilities move through a world that wasn't designed for them? To help us answer that question and many others, I'd like to introduce our panelists. Niki Boerema is a special education teacher at the West Shore Educational Service District. Stephanie Carlson is a vocational rehabilitation counselor at Michigan Rehabilitation Services. Devon Hernandez is a customer engagement coordinator at West Michigan Community Mental Health. And Dawn McHale is an invisible disability advocate. So they'll each speak for about 5-7 minutes, and then we'll open up the floor for questions. Like I said, feel free to type your questions into the Q&A box at any time. So Devon is going to start us off. Thank you so much, Devon.
Hi, I'm excited to be here, so thanks for having me. I'm going to start off by painting a little bit of a picture for you about what invisible disabilities may look like. So imagine that you're walking through a store and you're just getting out of work, you're in a hurry, you need to grab 5 things and get home and cook dinner for your family. You're walking through the bread aisle and there's somebody super slow in front of you and you are frustrated and you're like, excuse me, I'm just trying to get out of here. This person doesn't acknowledge you, they look down, they're acting a little bit strange. So you bypass them. You're like, all right, I'm going to do this, get to the checkout. You get to the checkout, that same person is standing in front of you and they are fumbling through their wallet and they can't find the stuff that they're looking for to pay for their groceries. So they pull out a bag of quarters and they're like, okay, the cashier is going to help me count these because I don't know how to count quarters. I forgot all my cash at home. Well, now you're even more frustrated because you need to get home to your family, your kids are waiting, everybody's hungry. The person looks back at you and they're like, I'm so sorry. And you're like, you need to hurry up. I need to get home. You're wasting my time. Now imagine this. Imagine you've been working all week long. You haven't left the house in 2 weeks. You've been really hungry and you're feeling really alone. So you decide to venture out after working with your therapist on a game plan of going to the store. You're like, I'm going to go to Walmart. I'm going to grab my items. I'm going to go at 3 o'clock before everybody gets out of work. Well, you get to Walmart, you're taking your time. Next thing you know, it's 5 o'clock, rush hour comes in. You're starting to panic. There's too many people around you. Oh no, you forgot your money, but you have this wallet full of quarters. Hopefully somebody will be able to help you count them. You're feeling defeated. You go to check out. There's somebody behind you getting really mad and yelling at you. That person is feeling so alone because they have no way of paying for their food. This is just an example of what an invisible disability may look like. So out in public, oftentimes we look at people as moving slow or not doing a good job or not meeting our expectations. It's a prime example. So our job at West Michigan is to make sure that people have those life skills to do a good job out in public alone. And it's really important and crucial to recognize, even though you may feel like somebody's not meeting your expectations, how they should out in the community, that sometimes people are just doing the best that they can and they haven't been out in a long time, possibly. And the world really just isn't meant for them. Our America, especially, we are a world full of hurry and rush, and everybody must get everything done to a certain standard. You know, in other cultures, people actually take their time and slow down and appreciate life and help. You know, the person behind could have said, how about I help you count that out? And made the person that had the disability feel comfortable and included instead of secluded. So, I mean, this happens all too often. I see it all the time. I'm always that person in the store that's like, hey, let me help you. Let me call the dial-a-ride for you. You don't have a working phone, you don't know the phone number, maybe you can't read. There's just so many different variables that happen with invisible disabilities, with mental illness, with developmental disabilities, and we don't recognize them in our culture as being included. Something that was brought to my attention that I thought was really interesting was we have to teach people that have invisible disabilities how to deal with us or deal with the people that don't have them instead of vice versa. I think it's super important to be inclusive in the opposite way of teaching people that actually have the skills and the knowledge to be helpful, to help the people around them that have those disabilities. So, moral of the story is that we are here and we're here to support you. And anytime that anybody needs any help, you can look out for an advocate. We are all over, and even your neighbor. We have to find those alliances so that we can move forward in this world and help build people up instead of putting them down all the time.
Thank you so much, Devon. I couldn't agree more. Would you explain for people or give some examples of what an invisible disability is or what we mean when we say that?
Sure. So there's lots of different kinds of invisible disabilities. The kind that I'm talking about may be a mental health disability, somebody that has extreme anxiety or depression, maybe some agoraphobia. However, there's so many physical invisible disabilities too. High blood pressure, cholesterol problems. Maybe somebody has cancer and you can't see it. There's so many different. I mean, an invisible disability touches so many people. I mean, it has probably touched you or I at some point. I know I've struggled with anxiety in the past, and being able to come out and advocate for that is important. There might be schizophrenia, there could be bipolar depression or mania. You see these people going to jail all of the time. There could be addiction. We see people that have invisible disabilities end up in jail, end up in the system, end up in foster care, and it's because we don't have the good supports that we need in our environments to support them to be successful. We're trying to build the system because right now it's broken and people get stuck in a cycle, and we need to figure out how to help them.
You're right, we really do. We really do. Thank you so much for being here to teach us how to be good allies and advocate for these folks. So who wants to speak up next?
I'll go ahead and go.
Thanks.
Hi, everyone. I'm Stephanie Carlson from Michigan Rehabilitation Services. A lot of people hear our name and instantly just clue in on the word rehab. They think about drug rehab, alcohol rehab. And while some of our customers may have those issues, we look at rehab as vocational rehab. How do we help this person overcome something so they can be successful in work? Okay, we're looking at that vocation, job, careers. When we think about disability, this is often something that is still so stigmatized. So I'm going to go to the ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, and they identify or define disability as a person who has a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities, has a record of such an impairment, or is regarded as having such an impairment. So with that being said, someone in a room of people is going to have a disability, whether you think they do or not. It is not just the individuals that use assistive technology or utilize wheelchairs. It is the person that, like Devon explained, might seem lost or slow, or like they are just getting in your way out at the store, and we as humans need to open up and be more understanding about, okay, this person took forever ringing my groceries up. This might be their first job and they're 40 years old. And it's their first job because they were able to get some supports to help give them the training to even bring them that far as being a cashier, you know, because they could have one of these invisible disabilities, which can fall under cognitive dysfunctions, mental disorders, debilitating fatigue, pain, anything with their hearing, eyesight impairments. There's thousands of different issues that could classify someone as having an invisible disability. I often talk to customers about, don't try to figure out if you have a disability or not, because a lot of people will say, oh, I don't have that. You know, I'm not like him. You know, I'm not like that person over there I knew and they have a disability. If you have something going on that is causing impediments in your life, making things a little bit more of a struggle for you to keep a job, get a job, have relationships with other people, that could very much qualify you as someone with a disability. Someone who takes a medication, if you're on ADHD, depression, anxiety, if you are diabetic and you're having trouble regulating it, and even though you feel like you're following everything the doctor says, and you're still having lots of issues, then you may qualify as someone, that would want to come to us for services possibly, because you don't automatically, there's people with disabilities and there's disabled people, okay? A person with a disability is still going to be able to work. And a lot of people might not think that. Now, someone who is completely disabled and not able to work, those individuals may exist in our population too, certainly. But the majority of people that have disabilities are capable of doing something in our society. And we need to try to give them the tools that they need. Some things that we can offer them assistance with is that vocational guidance and counseling, just help them do that job exploration piece. What is an interest area of yours? How could that relate to a job? Now, how do your impediments affect you getting that job? Those are the pieces we want to try to connect for individuals to help them reach their employment goal. We always talk about this as a team process. We don't just plonk you into a job. We want to make sure you're going to be successful. So we might be honest with you about some areas, such as if you're at a 4th grade reading level, it might not be appropriate for you to go to school to be a lawyer. Okay, we're gonna break it down. What does it take to get into these trades? And how can we bridge the gap and get you there? Do you need a job coach? Do you need Social Security benefits counseling, where you have some one-on-one specialized counseling that goes into the fact that you receive disability, but that you can still work and you can earn up to a certain amount of money on top of your disability check. So you can go out there and earn more money. And a lot of individuals are scared to do that. We offer a safe space for them to explore that. And hopefully, explain all the work incentives they may be eligible for, and have them earn more money and maybe, get a better living situation than what they're currently in, because they're living on such a limited budget. Some people might just need an accommodation. Do they need a standing work desk? Do they need a reader device to read their software to them at work? Do they have a job, but now they need hearing aids? A lot of people don't know that that's something we can assist with. If you're working and you need hearing aids to be safe on the job, to be able to communicate effectively on the job, that is something we can assist paying for. Co-pays for physical therapy, speech therapy, occupational therapy, as long as it's related to an employment goal that, we are going to help support you either returning to, or it makes sense for you to receive that to get to that employment goal. That is something we can explore assisting with. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. So it sounds like you really act as like a bridge between people and a ton of different resources. So many different facets of that I hadn't really thought about.
We hope to, yes.
So we're talking about work, and Dawn, I think you might have an interesting perspective on this, in terms of, I want to draw attention to, work not being the only important thing that you can give to society. So even if you can't, like hold down a job, like they say, like, or if you have other ways of giving back, that's still just as valid. So I wanted to hear from you, Dawn. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that. Oop, sorry, you're muted there.
Okay.
There we go. Sorry about that.
It's okay. Good evening. My name is Dawn McHale, and I am an invisible disability advocate. You may ask yourself, what is an invisible disability? It's having a mental illness. I am currently a consumer at CMH. I started going to CMH in 2012. It was a difficult approval process at first. I went to the emergency room to seek help because of an episode I was having. I was treated poorly because they didn't see anything wrong with me. If you were to look at me, would you know I'm disabled? Probably not. I have the physical ability to walk, stand, do chores, and take care of myself. However, having an invisible disability sometimes doesn't allow me even to get out of bed. Being labeled disabled was something hard to accept at first. I felt ashamed, guilty, worthless. I felt like life had no meaning. I accepted the label disabled by realizing others had the same thoughts and feelings. I was not alone. Once I began sharing my story with family and friends, I realized that they were very accepting and non-judgmental. But they are not the only ones I have to deal with. The world as a whole is very unaccepting because of being uneducated, of not being educated, sorry. It is not just uneducation about the invisible disability, but more directly on how the world accepts it. Our world or community is not built for me because it's hard to get a job and keep it. How do you have a conversation with a prospective employer that you have a mental illness and that there will be times and days when you just can't come to work? Some things I wish people knew about mental illness is that you are not your disease. We are not defined by it. I'm Dawn. I'm a graphic designer, an artist, a daughter, an aunt, a sister, and a friend. Mental illness is treatable and you can live a successful life. I would like it if there was an open dialogue about the issue. From my experience, people are hesitant and unsure how to talk about it. But they can talk about diabetes and heart failure. I would like to have people realize it is a disease and it is treatable. I am not my disease. I like that more famous people are coming forward and talking about their disease, especially through the pandemic. It has made me accept it more because the disease does not discriminate. If you're out there suffering, please reach out and ask for help. Find someone that can help guide you. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you so much, Dawn.
Thank you.
That's really, really important. Thank you for sharing that with us.
You're welcome.
So I think I'm really glad that we can hear both perspectives about the importance of work and all the different ways that we can bridge those gaps and help people work, and also that you can be disabled and work, right? So you have a disability, but you're also a graphic designer and an artist. And so you're, putting these great things out into the world, and you have a disability. So,
and I don't define myself by that. I am more than that.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you. So let's go to Nikki. Really excited to hear your perspective in the work that you do.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for asking me to join this. My name is Niki Boerema, and I am a teacher for West Shore Educational Service District. I'm in my 17th year of teaching. So I teach students ages 16 to 20 with moderate cognitive impairments. Also, I'm coming at this from the perspective of someone who has a sibling with a disability as well. My older brother is 42 and he has Down syndrome. So I kind of come at it from that family perspective as well as the perspective of a teacher. For West Shore ESD, we offer quite a variety of classrooms. I know that we're talking a lot about invisible disabilities. For my students, they present as having more visible disabilities. But many of them also have invisible disabilities as well. So in the state of Michigan, students can go to school through the age of 26 if they're a special education student with an IEP. So we offer quite a variety of classrooms, all the way from early childhood special education, starting in infancy with home visits, all the way up through like a preschool age, elementary, all the way up through transition. So up to that age of 26, we have classrooms for students that are moderately cognitively impaired, students that have severe impairments, students that have maybe emotional struggles. We have what's called a reintegration classroom where we help students who are struggling emotionally or behaviorally to build those social emotional skills to be successful in their school. For my classroom, I really focus on helping my students become as independent as possible. I always say that my goal for my kids is that they will leave my classroom and leave our ESD programs as successful contributing members of their community. And that can look different for everybody. As Dawn mentioned, I think it's so important that we are not defined by our disability or just defined by our ability to work. For my classroom, that is a big focus on building up skills to be independent, but that's going to look different for each person. For some people, that might mean that they are holding down a job that's a full-time job. For some people, that might mean a part-time job. For others, it might mean volunteer opportunities. But it's also about what success looks like for them. So are they able to be as independent as possible with recreation activities, with leisure activities, with accessing their community? So we do a lot of life skill related instruction. As Devon had mentioned, a lot of people don't realize even how difficult it can be for someone to go to a store, to form a shopping list, to pay at a store. So those are a lot of the skills that we really build up for our students and helping to make things as accessible as possible for them. I think a lot of people don't realize how inaccessible it is for people with visible and invisible disabilities. There are so many things that can be barriers, such as transportation, such as things not being available with picture support or audio support, or things like that. So it's really important for my classroom to think creatively about how we can build those skills up for our students, because unfortunately, the world is not built for people with disabilities. And I would love to see us get better at that in our communities, to make it more accessible and to not have to expect people with disabilities to fit into the mold of everyone else. It's not about fixing people. It's not about having to make them fit in we need to really focus on making things accessible for everyone. As Stephanie had mentioned, as far as work skills, I really want to focus with my students on what their dreams are and how we can make that work for them. So, for example, I may have a student that their dream is to be a police officer, for example. And because of their disability, that's just not going to happen. They're, you know, maybe they struggle with their reading ability or their judgment skills, or, you know, not being able to drive. But what we then do is we look at how can we help that student achieve that in some way, shape, or form. So if they can't be a police officer, what are some skills that they do have that could relate to that field? What could we have them doing at a police station that would be a job that's either a paid opportunity or a volunteer opportunity? I believe that all of my students are capable of work. They're all capable of living independently as possible for them. You know, some of my students might be living on their own. Some of my students might be living with family support. Some of my students might be living with agency support, such as CMH or MRS or other services like that. So I really think that we need to focus on accessibility. I think we need to focus on what people with disabilities bring to the table. You know, the fact that if my students were here on this panel, you know, talking, they would love to sit there and say as well, here's what I need to be successful. Here's how I feel about how people treat me. We've come so far, I think, in the past like 30 years, but we have so much farther to go. And having a disability is not tragic. It also doesn't mean that you are this brave, inspirational person that we should feel bad for. You know what I mean? Like, I think sometimes those are the only sides we see in the media. We either see, oh, the tragedy of having a disability, whether it's invisible or visible, or the people that almost promote it as an exceptional thing, when people with disabilities are just like the rest of us. They have the same wants, they have the same needs, they have the same goals in life as the rest of us. And I would love it if we get to a point where in our society, it's not exceptional to see that somebody with a disability was voted homecoming queen, or that somebody with a disability, you know, is working at a grocery store. That should be an everyday occurrence. It's kind of sad to me in our society that it's not, and that things like that are so newsworthy because they're not super common. So my goal for my students is help them to be independent, help them to be successful, and to contribute in whatever way they are able to.
Thank you so much, Nikki. That's fantastic. Really, really interesting perspective. Looks like we have a question. So, and we are open up for questions now since everybody's had a chance to talk. So please feel free to put your questions in the Q&A. So this may be a question for Nikki. He says, I have a 17-year-old son with Down syndrome at Shelby High School. He is a sophomore, but will graduate with a certificate of completion in 2 years, not a diploma. If we wanted him to attend a life skills class following high school, would that be in Oceana County, or would he have to go to the Mason ESD?
So we do have programs in Mason County, Lake County, and Oceana County. So for our ESD system, I'm so sorry, that's my dogs in the background. If you can hear that noise. I apologize. I feel so unprofessional with my dogs in the background. So we have classrooms in Mason County, Lake County, and Oceana County. And for transition age, those classes would be dependent upon a variety of levels for each student. it's not based just on one thing. It's often based on their adaptive abilities, their testing scores. We do have a classroom in Hart High School that is the older version of our moderate cognitively impaired classroom. If that's clear enough.
Thank you so much. I'm sure if it wasn't, he'll ask again for clarification, or he can follow up with you later too. So we had another question. Devon, at West Michigan Community Mental Health, are there programs or services that cater to veterans?
There are. This is something new that we have. Well, we've always included veterans in our services. However, we have a special service now just for them, and it's run by a veterans navigator. So somebody that's actually been in the system. And so they are a supports coordinator, which means that they do a lot of coordination between finding housing, finding employment, helping with signing up for disability if they need Social Security through the veteran services or civilian, depending on how they were released from the military. So yep, we have a whole array of things that we are offering to veterans. It is hard in our Tri-County area because our resources are limited. However, we do the best that we can, and we always are reaching out to other surrounding areas too if there's help nearby that the veteran's able to get to.
That's really good to know. Yeah, resources can be limited, but it feels like everybody pulls together so well and so completely. Speaking about resources, Stephanie, I wanted to ask, since you're sort of connected to the state, right? It's a state agency. What other like resources that are you connected to, or like what state agency does that come down from?
We are state and federally funded.
Okay.
And we fall under the labor and economic opportunity.
Oh, there it is.
is our umbrella that we are under. And we also do have vet reps that we have access to, and so we can also, can help serve veterans. So and CMH consumers, we really just want to develop more partnerships. So we have more wraparound services because we're realizing that not only individuals with developmental disabilities need that wraparound support, that people with mental health issues, with cognitive impairments, with learning disability, everybody walking down the street can benefit from a network of supports around them and knowing what's available, because it's always changing.
And we had a question: how would someone connect with Michigan Rehabilitation Services if they need assistance with training and employment?
We have a 1-800 number, which I will provide to be shared on the website at the end of this.
Sure.
I cover Mason and Oceana, and like I said, a little bit of Muskegon County. So you can contact me directly if you need assistance, and I will provide that information as well to be shared. I don't know how you want us to share that, but
sure. Yeah, so you can actually put it in the chat. You should be able to put it in the chat and send it to everyone. Okay. And then, yeah, go for it. And then everyone will have that information.
And then I also take up space now in Ludington and Shelby, Michigan works on various days during the week. So if you'd rather meet with me in person, we can arrange to do that as well.
So many offices. So someone says this panel is awesome. So fantastic job, everyone. I had a question about using the term differently abled versus disabled. I would not want to offend someone, and I want to use the most correct term. Could anybody address that?
I could speak to that a little bit.
Thanks.
So I think that person first language is very important. So for example, with my students, I would not refer to them as disabled students. I would refer to them as students with a disability because they're a person first. As Dawn had mentioned before, they're not defined by their disability. Somebody with a hearing impairment isn't a deaf boy. He is a boy with a hearing impairment. So I always use people first language. I don't necessarily feel that it is necessary to say differently abled versus disabled. To me, it's the aspect of person first language. One exception to that is that within the community of people with autism, there are a lot of people with autism that do not prefer person first language. So you will often see in the media or within groups, they will refer to themselves as autistic. I'm an autistic man, I'm an autistic woman, an autistic child. And so for me, I use person first unless someone says differently. So even for my students with autism, I would say they're a student with autism. But if they were to correct me and say, no, I prefer to be referred to as autistic, that's how I would refer to that person. So others might want to chime into, I just, as a teacher, I don't feel that it's offensive to say someone has a disability. So I don't think it's necessary to always say differently abled. But I do think it's imperative to use person-centered and person-first language unless that person prefers otherwise.
Nikki, I agree with you. We at CMH, we don't label people as mental, like you're not mentally ill. We say a person with mental illness, because again, we're not defining them. That's something they have. You may have diabetes. I may have a mental illness. That you're not, we don't want to put that label on somebody if they don't want that. But they may correct you and whatever they feel most comfortable. And it's okay to ask too, if that's something that's brought up in conversation. I mean, you should know what they want to be called. Most of the time we call them by their first name. We'd rather say that. It's like, it's somebody that we serve.
Exactly. I was going to say that one powerful thing that I heard a while back was we're all just temporarily abled. So if we live long enough, if we feel we're free of all disabilities, as we are in this moment, if we live long enough, disabilities are going to happen to us, whether it happens overnight or whether it happens with the aging process. So again, I think it's that normalization of disabilities, because again, I don't feel like it's a bad thing, but then I do have customers that come to us and they very much do not want to, they don't even want to be associated with us. And well, why am I eligible? I don't want to be eligible. I don't have a disability. I just can't do this or that. And it was like, I understand, so trying to explain, like, it's not a bad thing. Like it's not, like we all have struggles. But again, it's that preference of, just like, do I want to be called Steph or Stephanie? Do I want to let people know about what I have going on inside that others might not know about? Or do I not want them to know? And that's an individual's choice.
Thank you
And
so
I think
much.
that starts so early also. Like we need to start talking to children about disabilities earlier on. We need to break that stigma that it's okay if someone has a disability and they have the choice to share or not share as much as they would like. That, as we said, that people all around us have things that are going on that we don't know about or we aren't aware of, and that it's okay. And we need to kind of normalize that, I think.
Absolutely. Let's see. So some students may be attending this event who are taking American government class. Could someone maybe address the role of government in dealing with these issues and explain the significance of the passage of the Americans with Disabilities Act when it was passed in the early 90s?
I will chime in, since that is kind of what
Yeah.
made vocational rehab become a thing. Vocational rehab came out of the ADA occurring, and individuals coming back from war that could no longer return to their jobs they were doing. Whether it was they came back missing limbs, maybe they came back, with PTSD, which of course wasn't called PTSD then, but we know now that's definitely what individuals were coming back with. And they couldn't return to their job, say in a shop or in an office or whatever it was. So it became mandated that every state have vocational rehabilitation. And then of course it's evolved, and now we don't get as many veterans as we wish we would come and use our services, but that's okay, because we're serving lots more in the community now that may not have known about us before, and still many don't know about our services. But it all came out of the ADA and the fight for accessibility, and that yes, they're just because they have a disability doesn't mean that they can't contribute, and that they want to contribute, and that they have skills and talent and many things to contribute to our society.
And in that same sort of government topic there, so how do we encourage representatives in our local, state, and federal governments to advocate for further support of our disabled community?
That is very difficult. So I mentioned at the beginning of this, we have, I think it's today was Walk a Mile in Lansing, that we get to take people with mental health or invisible disabilities to Lansing and talk about the different things that we need from the state and federal governments to do well within our local agencies. It's hard to get people to listen once they've made up their minds. Most of it comes from funding, like, do we have enough money? Where do we put all of this money that we're going to get? But really just reaching out and finding out when the senators are going to be in your communities. A lot of times they share that in like Mason County Press. They'll let the different senators will put out a press that they're going to be in town. So that's a good opportunity to share.
Thank you so much. Let's see. Oh, so since I plan to become a teacher in the future, how could I teach the importance of disability to students in the future? I know that I'm autistic, and I would like to help future students understand the significance of disability and how people can be different in unique ways.
I think, as I had mentioned earlier, it's so important to start kids young. Kids are so open to the uniqueness of everybody. There are a lot of great blogs out there right now and Facebook pages by teachers and groups that are about how to start that inclusivity, not only with disabilities, but also with racial differences or different ethnicities or different religions. Some examples of that would be a group that's called The Conscious Kid. They're on Facebook. They're also on Instagram, and they're fantastic. They constantly have book recommendations, movie recommendations for kids. They hosted a town hall seminar on Sesame Street about disabilities. They hosted a town hall seminar on Sesame Street about racial tensions within our nation. So the Conscious Kid is great. The Tutu Teacher, like TUTU, the Tutu Teacher, she is also great. She's on Instagram and Facebook. Tons of lists of books and videos and ideas of how to integrate that into the classroom. So I think those are great recommendations. And in general, just I think being being open to discussions, being open to talking about how amazing it is that everybody is unique, that someone that has autism, they don't need to be fixed. They have an amazing viewpoint on life, and that maybe we need to start thinking differently about how it's not just the way we see things that's the norm, you know, that
Yeah.
we need to be open to other people's perspectives.
Nikki, I think I'm going to give your information to the person who asked that question. Yeah, it seems like you have a lot you want to share. So, yeah, okay. So let's see. To any of the panelists, and maybe Dawn, you want to address this. Are there any volunteer opportunities or other ways we can help support you? Oh, you're muted.
Support me personally, or having a mental illness? I don't quite understand the question.
Sure. So how can we help support people with mental illness?
Just as Nikki said, being open and having a conversation, and no judgments. We're all unique. We all are different. And also, you know, you are more than whatever disease you have, diabetes, heart failure, mental illness. That does not define us.
And I think a big thing too is just to be kind. I mean,
Yes.
Yeah.
if you see somebody struggling, ask them if they need help. Maybe they had a bad day. Maybe they don't have a diagnosis, but maybe they're just having a bad day. We all have them, and we really need to work on building each other up instead of pushing each other out of the way. I think that's so important.
Yes.
So to be a kind person in society will start a big movement.
I agree with you, Devon.
Are there other ways that people can get involved in advocacy? Or I know we talked a little bit about, you know, contacting your local government, but are there other ways that we can be good allies to people with disabilities? I'm thinking about like marches and stuff, but I guess those don't happen very often.
No.
But even we were talking about before about, you know, like what was it, May, like the month of May, the month of March. I forgot what those months are for, but I wrote down March and May.
May is for mental illness, stopping the stigma.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna write that down.
March is Developmental Disabilities Awareness Month.
Thank you. Yeah. I think sharing things like that can be really important, even if it's just a quick post on Facebook, because you'll show people that you're an ally and maybe they're going through something with mental illness, or maybe they just got a diagnosis and they know that you understand and they can turn to you or they can share with you. So sharing those kind of things can be really impactful and you don't even realize it.
I think informally, a great way to be an advocate is to have conversations about it with people, normalize it. I also think it's so important to stop the stigma and stop some of the negative words or negative phrases that you hear used and associated. So, and once again, we can start kids young that way. You know, there's so many phrases that people use in our society that can be so hurtful, and the people might not even realize it. They don't think about what they're saying, but it takes that person to stop them and say, hey, that's not okay to say that. Or when you say that, that's hurtful to people. I think that's a huge way to promote advocacy, is informally, you know, when you're when you're with your family members, when you're with your friends, when you're out in the community, you know, normalize invisible and visible disabilities and have those conversations, and you know, stop those comments that you hear, or those stigma statements that you hear. I just think that's really important.
I agree with you, Nikki.
I also feel just that social media is making such a huge impact and shaping young people in good ways and bad. But the good ways, I mean, it's just from the body positivity type movement that you're seeing. And it's the same with disabilities. You know, I myself ordered a sweatshirt the other day that says, if your brain can't make it, store-bought's okay. You know, and because I feel there is such a stigma with, you know, having to take medications. And, you know, I have that conversation with my customers all the time. You know, if you were diagnosed with cancer, or if you had to take insulin, you know, you wouldn't hesitate to take it. So why hesitate to take these other things that may very much help you live the life that you should be living, you know, and you deserve to have those experiences and be out there and be comfortable as possible doing it. And so if, you know, just little things like that, I feel like it, you know, some people really hate it, you know, hate the, you know, awareness things and all of that. But I feel like putting it out there like that helps break those stigmas, and the open, honest talk about it helps other people be more comfortable with it as well and share.
Yeah, I feel it's about just sharing and having an open dialogue about it. And if you can educate at the same time, that's wonderful.
Yeah. Something when addressing somebody, instead of saying, what's wrong with you? Like, what happened to you? Tell me. Like, let's have a conversation, because I guarantee you somebody's not intentionally hurting you. Like, why are you doing this to me? What's going on? There's a situation happening, and we have to talk about it. And it might not be something that have just happened. It could be PTSD from 15 years ago. You don't know. Somebody's reacting to you because of something that happened to them, not because of what's standing in front of them right at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
I just read an article about that same topic recently. It was a set of 4 people in England that actually kept diaries for a certain period of time of all the different things that they encountered. Some of them had visible disabilities, but some of them had invisible disabilities. And that was one of the things that came up over and over again, was the invasiveness of people asking them really invasive questions. You know, why are you like that? Why are you doing that? And they talked about, why do you feel that you have a right to know my background? Like, people with disabilities don't owe you an explanation. They don't owe you their detailed history about what's going on. And as you had mentioned earlier, I just think, like, if people could just be kind and accept people for who they are, and not do so much judgment and so much questioning. And instead of asking someone why they are the way they are, maybe instead you could ask, what do you need? How can I help you? You know, what is a way that I can help you? Or what is a way that I can help make something accessible for you?
So it looks like we've exhausted our supply of questions. Does anyone have any other questions for our panelists? Don't see anything coming in. As we kind of wrap up, I just want to thank you all so much. So what sustains your passion for this work? Because clearly you're all so passionate about this. What sustains you?
I can tell you about mine. I've been working in mental health for 10 years. And when I started, I was a medical assistant. I don't know, I was pretty young and I was just like, oh, it's a job. And then I got into it and I was like, wow, we are making a difference. So people with a mental health or invisible disabilities tend to die 15 to 20 years earlier than those without. And I wanted to make an impact on that because they don't have the resources, they don't get the right health care. So I've watched mental health evolve into we're integrated care. We treat the whole body. We don't, we don't stop at the neck. We are one person, and what affects our mind also affects our body. So being able to watch mental health transform and really be able to get some of that funding to support that, what has been amazing. And so that's my passion, and that's why I stay. I have personal stories too. I have people that are in my family that have dealt with invisible disabilities, and being able to advocate and make a difference, even if it's an inch and we need to go 17 miles, we're still on our way and making a difference every day.
Dawn, did you want to speak?
No.
Okay.
I agree. I'm just agreeing with what Devon has said.
After 17 years of teaching, it's still exciting. I still have things that I'm learning every day, things that are changing. It's so exciting to see the changes in my students, especially when we consider that some of the students in my program started our ESD system in infancy or started when they were 2 years old. And to see their progress is amazing. From a personal perspective, to see my brother's independence is amazing. He's 42. When he was born, my parents were told he won't be talking, he won't be walking, he's never going to ride a bike, he's never going to have a job. And he blew those expectations out of the water. He's had jobs, he rides a bike, he gets up for work on his own every day. And I just think that within the world of special education, within the world of people who have disabilities, there's so much progress to be made. There's so many joys to be celebrated. And it's exciting to see where we've come from and where we're going towards and all the progress that can be made. So even when I get frustrated and even when I feel like it's one step forward and 5 steps back, it's still exciting to see that progress. It's exciting to see how our society is changing. When I look at how my own children are exposed to people with disabilities, whether it's invisible or visible disabilities, it's worlds away from when, I was a kid and when my parents were kids, and we're seeing big progress. That's exciting.
I agree. It's the successes for sure. I mean, we all see the unfortunate situations that occur and probably, will continue to occur because we do live in a world of people we can't control. We can only control ourselves and how we respond to others. And, the being kind movement and all of that is just impacting everywhere. And right now with employers really needing workers, I am so hopeful that this is going to just be huge for individuals to finally have a chance to maybe shine where they weren't able to before because the employers had, tons and tons of applicants coming in the door, where now they might be a little bit more flexible and realize that there's this talent pool out there that they have not even tapped into and been open to letting in, and okay, maybe I will let that person try this job for a couple of weeks to see if it's a good fit. Or maybe they do need a little bit extra time, extra training, and then they'll be successful. It's like so many times we tell employers, this person's going to be there every day.
Mhm.
And employers, that's a lot of times, that's what they say. The biggest thing they need is that availability piece. And, the training, if the person's dedicated enough, it's going to come. And so to give people the chance to learn at their pace, and just be more open to being creative and not giving a list 5 miles long that they want out of an employee when really they might only need 3 tasks done, so those successes and hopefully the future successes to come is definitely what keeps me motivated.
Oh, that's great. Well, thank you all so much for sharing and for teaching us so much. I've learned so much from all of you tonight. Thank you so much to our audience for your great questions. I want to remind everyone about the remainder of the series. So you can check out our website, which I'm going to put into the chat, to see all of the events coming up on Humankind this semester, including sort of a related, what feels to me related to this event. There's an event on diversity, equity, and inclusion on November 10th, which will be really interesting. And then I also want to ask you to take our survey, which is just, I'll put that in the chat also, just to tell us what you thought of the event tonight. But again, thank you all so much for your time and for teaching us so much, and especially to Dawn, who's really, I think, hit a lot of us personally, and your story was just so important to hear. So thank you so much for being here. All right, well, everyone have a great rest of your night.
Okay. Bye.